and this is a live look out of Tel Aviv, Israel. As you can see, thousands of protesters are taking to the streets right there, protesting and demanding that the hostages being held by Hamas be returned immediately. And they are also demonstrating against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, demanding new elections. So we do want to bring you that, but we continue to follow developments out of the Middle East. We do want to share this with you right here. This is a social media post sent by Trey Yingst, who is a Fox News correspondent out of Tel Aviv. It says, tonight, Israel will suspend all educational activities, limit gatherings to 1,000 people starting at 11 p.m. local time. And we also want to share this live look with you from the Israel-Lebanon border right there, as again, we continue to follow developments out of the Middle East. President Biden actually returning to the White House this afternoon to consult with his national security team about the ongoing situation in the Middle East. This comes as the U.S. Embassy has issued an alert in Israel warning of an imminent attack by Iran. Also happening earlier today, Iran's Revolutionary Guards seized an Israeli-linked cargo ship. The news coming from the Iranian state-run news agency, where it reported that a guard's helicopter had boarded and taken into Iranian waters the Portuguese-flagged MSC Aries. This also comes as Iran's supreme leader has promised to retaliate against Israel over the attack on its consulate in Damascus that killed 12 people. And another strike in Gaza earlier this week killed 3 sons and 4 grandchildren of the leader of Hamas. Israel's foreign minister threatening earlier this week that his country's forces would strike Iran directly if the Islamic Republic launched an attack from its territory against Israel. And again, tensions continue to ramp up as President Biden now returning from his weekend at the beach to the White House to consult with his national security team about the ongoing situation in the Middle East. We do want to bring in Javed Ali, who worked at the Defense Intelligence Agency as well as the Department of Homeland Security before joining the FBI. He is now an associate professor of practice at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. Javed, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Stephanie, thank you. Always good to be with you.
Absolutely. And I do want to get to the very latest news that President Biden is now heading back to the White House to discuss with his national security team the situation in the Middle East. What does that indicate you as he leaves his weekend beach house to head back to D.C. for this matter?
Well, Stephanie, you did a really nice job at the beginning, walking through all the different things that apparently are in motion. And if President Biden has returned from Rehoboth or wherever that vacation spot was to the White House, that to me is another signal that this is the White House sort of preparing for this next step that, by all accounts, it looks like Iran is ready to launch what they perceive, the Iranians perceive, to be a retaliatory strike for the Israeli attack against a facility next to their embassy in Damascus. And if the president is coming back, that means the entire national security apparatus is probably going to convene at the White House, either virtually or in person, to walk through what does everyone know at a particular moment in time, probably in the next few hours. How solid is the U.S. or Israeli intelligence about what that Iranian threat looks like, and then what potentially can the U.S. do, or what will it do if these attacks unfold? So there's so many things in play. But again, the president's coming back. That means they are taking this very seriously. You already mentioned the warnings that have gone out. So I think the international sort of community just kind of waiting for the next shoe to drop. And I think that will be this Iranian attack in whatever form it takes shape.
And let's talk about that, because earlier the U.S. Embassy issued that warning about an imminent threat, giving a window of about 48 hours. Can you speak more to the fact that they actually gave this very specific time frame, not leaving it open-ended? And I imagine, as you said, from an intelligence perspective, they had reason to believe that Iran might be striking very soon.
Well, going back to even Thursday into yesterday, there appears to have been what must be fairly good intelligence about that Iranian ramp up for their reprisal attack. And based on other media reporting that's come out over the past 24 hours, it looks like that attack, based on sort of these disclosures that are being made to different reporters, that it will very likely involve some combination of Iranian launched cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, drones, all weapons that they have used uh, over the past couple of years against different targets. They haven't done something like this in Israel. And again, that to me is an indicator that the intelligence must be very solid, and it must be down to the level of detail that they can sort of detect all the different things it takes in order to get those different kind of weapon systems ready to launch. So that, in a way, is a good news story, is that we have that kind of intelligence insight into Iranian activity, but these are things that are fairly observable too, unlike a terrorist attack or something like that, which would be harder to detect. And again, that might be another card that Iran tries to play that isn't being observed right now, just because it's so hard to get intelligence indicators of something like that. But again, if it's more confined to this missile type of threat, even though it's not one single type of missile operation, then that is why these warnings are taking place, and that is why the tweet you share, that not to have 1,000 people in any one location, because there could be a whole volley of these types of missiles and projectiles launched into Israel over the next day or so.
And you mentioned that, which is the tweet that we just spoke about, also limiting suspending educational activities. And as you mentioned, again, limiting just the number of people who are allowed to gather. When we're taking a look at this timeline, though, and again, we keep hearing that window of 48 hours. Could it extend beyond that? And just how long on high alert should Israel be?
It could extend longer than that. Now, this is pretty technical, but with some of these weapons, certainly with ballistic missiles, again, maybe the intelligence is picking up sort of the movement of the missiles out of sort of hidden facility, more out in the open, which would allow them to be fired. You actually also have to get certain types of fuel and ignition systems into ballistic missiles, in particular cruise missiles, kind of different story. Um, and drones, obviously, different as well. So there are these sort of technical steps that have to go in place to launch these different types of systems, with ballistic missiles probably being the most technical and having the longest sort of timeline. But if Iran is going to launch drones, I mean, those could be that have explosive packages on them at the other end of the spectrum. Those, you don't need that much time to actually launch and deploy them. And from a timing perspective too, you also mentioned the really fiery rhetoric that's come out from the Iranian supreme leader and other senior Iranian officials. And so every day that goes by in which they don't do something in response to that attack in Damascus now almost 2 weeks ago, it makes them look weak. And so I do think we're in a window of the next couple days where it seems very likely. But again, maybe the Iranians will hit pause, or maybe that they will sort of pull back, knowing that already the U.S. and Israel have some ability to detect what they're doing. But I do think the longer they wait, then it'll just complicate their ability to respond.
And especially with, as you mentioned, the very fiery remarks from Iran's leaders saying that they will retaliate for that deadly strike on their embassy in Damascus. Could this be common ground between Israel and the U.S.? Because as we've been seeing in the growing weeks, there have been fractures between how President Biden and his administration want to see Israel handle the situation in Gaza. But again, there's that commonality now of preventing Iran from striking Israel.
Yeah, this seems like it'll bring Israel and the U.S. together, that in a way is separate from the campaign inside Gaza itself. And Israel has struck targets related to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and even the Quds Force, this unconventional warfare wing of Iran. And those were the a number of the individuals who were killed in Damascus were part of the Quds Force. And I wrote an opinion piece about this a couple days ago, and this is what I tried to sort of put in that assessment, that the fact that so many Quds Force officers died in that strike, the fact that two of the seven, at least two of the seven were generals. As far as we know, the Iranians have never lost that many Quds Force officers in a single operation, either by the U.S. or Israel. So this was an escalation of pressure against them, and this isn't like the previous type of strikes that have happened against Quds Force personnel in the field or facilities in Iraq and Syria. This is dramatically different. So that's why I think we're seeing a different tone from the Iranians, and that's why it looks like the Iranians are preparing a response that is so qualitative and quantitatively different than anything they may have tried to do against Israel in the past.
And you made a really good point that I want to reiterate is that what is happening with Iran is separate with Israel's ongoing conflict with Hamas. But how might what is going on with Iran influence, if at all, what is happening right now in Gaza between Israel and Hamas?
Well, Hamas, what's left of it, because obviously Hamas has been under tremendous pressure by the IDF over the past 6 months. Does this relieve some of that, the military campaign against Hamas in southern Gaza? And that's where the bulk of the next phase of the campaign is probably going to happen. And when we talked last week, based on the developments then, for the most part, there had been sort of a tactical pause or even a withdrawal of a lot of IDF forces in southern Gaza. So, how does this play into that aspect of the campaign? That's another interesting um, point. Is Iran trying to coordinate with what's left of Hamas to have Hamas sort of fight back dramatically in a way it hasn't been able to over the last few months because of the pressure against it in Gaza? That's another question. And going back to the U.S. Israel relationship, it's President Biden has already said that the U.S. will try to do what it can to help stop this next Iranian attack. It sounds like there may be an ability to help Israel shoot down or intercept these different cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, drones that might be launched, and that's why um, an aircraft carrier battle group is sort of being repositioned for that. But there are a lot of just sort of variables in play, and this is all based on what we know. Again, there could be options Iran is also willing to introduce, either on the cyber side, the terrorism side, that there may not, or there may be a limited ability to stop that in advance, and we might see a combination of things all at once.
Before we let you go, Javed, is there anything else that you would like our viewers to really keep an eye out for, or anything in the coming days that you feel is important to share?
Well, going back to the piece that I wrote on Thursday, that I do think an Iranian response is imminent. I do think it will happen probably within the next 24 to 48 hours, and that is where all the media reporting seems to go, regardless. And as I also mentioned in that piece, that once this attack gets launched, and again, there could be different components to it. It may not all happen at once. That one would have to believe that Israel will also respond, and so how much broader is this conflict going to go between Iran and Israel? Will it pull in other countries in the region? Will the U.S. get involved beyond just trying to intercept missiles or other platforms launched by the Iranians? Will even incidentally any U.S. interests be affected by this? I mean, these are all really important questions that people need to start thinking about, because the potential for a wider conflict is very high now, and but Iran is going to react, and then how everybody else reacts to that Iranian next step is what we'll all have to just kind of wait and see for.
So these next 24 to 48 hours, no doubt, a lot of scrutiny expected for that window of time. Javed Ali, associate professor at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. As always, thank you for taking the time to really break all of this down for us, sharing the significance and the impact on all of these very important issues. We thank you.
All right, thank you, Stephanie.